On the Amigo, I don't know if you remember the picture of the boat and the anchor chain. There was a safety chain coming off the top of the boat, off the top and round, and trying to catch the anchor chain if it snapped. There was another chain came round. Well, to fit that, we had to go out in this rubber boat that we had, a little Z boat that we had on the ship. The only problem is, when we tried to pump it up, we were pumping it up and the pump just was rotten, so we couldn't pump up the rubber boat. Then we came up with this great idea. Somebody had sent us out a load of Belgian gas bottles, you know, the old colour gas bottles that you use for your stoves, and we had so many on board, so what we basically did was pump the actual rubber boat up using gas, and there's Tony sitting in it having a fag. And there was another one in Ireland. Tony and I worked for several stations in Ireland, both together, and there was one in Ireland called South Coast Radio in Cork, and Tony was on the air, or was supposed to have been on the air at 2 o'clock, and I was in the centre of Cork, just as the pubs were opening, about 11 o'clock, just walking along, and I suddenly heard this, "Lewis, you old queen, come here, dear boy." So there we go, fancy a quick drink, and this quick drink, 5 to 2, suddenly thought, "Tony, you're on the air in 5 minutes, there's 10 minutes walk at least to the radio station." So he said, "Oh, I'll have another one." So he has another one, and it was in the days of vinyl, and this is the influence Tony had over there on the management as well. Played, I think it was about three records in, the record jumped. Played another record, 2 records after that, it just stuck. And he left this bloody record sticking. Then he turns on the microphone, nobody minds any bad language, do they? He turns on the microphone, this is exactly what he said. He named all 8 directors of this radio station. He said, "I'd like to play that record for them because they're too fucking stingy to buy Starlight." That was it, and he just walked out, leaving it running. But he was back on the air the next day. But God, there's so many stories you could tell about Tony. You know, so many stories, absolutely brilliant.
So in that period in 1979, has there ever been a time that you were frightened that the boat would sink?
No, not really. Probably now, as you become older and wiser. But at the time, you see, what was I? You know, back I was 19 years old, 20 years old. So at the time, it's an adventure, and you don't, you know, you're there, and if you listen to some of the tapes of Caroline, especially the English service in 79 and the early part of 80, you can actually hear the water in the studio, you know, sort of swilling around where it used to sometimes come in, and you know, now you listen back to them and think, bloody hell, were we really out there in that sort of, you know, those sort of conditions? But no, it was funny. We were more worried in 1980 of the aerial coming down than the anchor chain breaking. Yeah, we're more worried about that than anything else. But no, it's one of those. Now you look back, and you can, you know, you think to yourself, yeah, there's situations we shouldn't have got out of that, but we did. You know, and I think that's it. You know.
Okay, when the Mi Amigo actually had sunk, you soon got a phone call from AB.
Oh, AB Nathan, yeah, there's a story. I was just in England at the time, and the phone went one morning, and this is exactly what it was like with the Voice of Peace, getting people out there. And I just got this call. I thought, who the hell was that? He said, "Oh, hello, I want you to come." He introduced himself. "Hello, I'm AB Nathan. I want you to come and work for my beautiful radio station." So then he told me all about it, and he just said, "When can you come down?" I said, "Well, as soon as you get me a ticket." I went out that afternoon down the pub for a quick drink, got back, phone had gone while I was down there. I was on the next flight to Tel Aviv. It was as quick as that. So within 24 hours from the actual phone call, I was actually down in Tel Aviv. It was as quick as that. But that was a weird situation, because whereas on Caroline it was all cloak and dagger stuff, there everything's done totally open. You know, the tenders were all used to go out from Jaffa. The ship used to get low on diesel, and it wasn't a case of a tender coming out. In fact, we never had a fuel tender. Just used to up anchor and sail into Ashdod. We always used to close the medium wave and FM transmitter down to go into Ashdod, and then one day we were held up, and there were some important ads that needed to go out. We were held up by the bunkering service to put the fuel on. So I was just talking to AB, and he said, "Oh, go and put the transmitters on." So we put the medium wave and the FM transmitters back on, and we're actually broadcasting in port. Then you had all these port workers coming down and we're swearing in Hebrew. Thought, oh, what the hell's going on? So we turned the station off. And then they came down again, and what it was they were listening on the FM, but they couldn't understand why they're getting all these static belts off the cranes. It was the medium wave aerial, medium wave transmitter. So we turned the medium wave off and left the FM on, and used to go into port and didn't even bother closing the FM transmitters down. Just used to leave it on.
So on board the peace ship, you met another great radio name. That was Christian St. John.
Oh yeah,
Jay Jackson.
Yeah, Jay Jackson.
One who is also in the radio heaven.
Oh, yeah, another one. Yeah, seem to die young, don't they?
Yeah.
Dear old Jay. Yeah, he was another great guy. He was actually telling me stories about when he was listening to Caroline in 78, 79, and he used to imagine. He said, "When I used to listen to you, I used to think you were sitting there in a suit, in a shirt and tie." I thought, normally a boiler suit, and that was it. But again, a really nice, really good guy, nice entertainer, very interesting person to talk to as well.
And there even was someone from the Netherlands, Cas Collins.
Oh yeah, Cas van Issel, yeah.
You didn't hear it, that he was originating from the...
No, I thought he was American.
Yeah.
I honestly thought he was American. In fact, we hit it off very, very well. And I still got a lot of the jingles he actually did for me there. But yeah, he's very nice guy. And I think he speaks 7 languages fluently. 7 languages fluently.
So tell us something about the ship. Was it seaworthy for the North Sea?
No.
No.
Well, it probably was, but it was a bit like a cork. I mean, you could almost blow on it and it would start to roll. I mean, it didn't ride the weather very well at all. It was very high. It had sand in its ballast, but not very much of it. So it used to, even in the calmest weather, would be, doing that. So, and you could, it had, I believe it had a flat bottom as well, because we were going to attempt to swim under it, but we thought, no, better not. But we used to go swim. That was the other thing. With another, there's loads, a bit like Tony, there's loads of AD stories. And he called up one day saying it was too rough to send a tender. We were saying, too rough to send a tender? We're all in swimming. We're all, we used to go swim. Then he banned swimming. Yeah. So kind of you swimming when it's too rough to send a boat, but it wasn't. It'd be flat calm, I think it was some of the Arabs that used to like to come out in really bad weather. I think they preferred doing that.
And what kind of response did you get there in the
very good? Yeah, very good, because it was the first station, I believe, in Israel to put on a very high-powered and stereo FM transmitter. So it was very good. And in fact, the FM transmitter you could hear further than the medium wave transmitter, to be honest, for clarity. But it was a very good response. But again, it was letters more than...
Did you get letters apart from Israel?
Oh yeah, all over. Yeah, Cyprus, Greece, even some from DXs in Scandinavia, places like that. So we get letters from all over the world. But good fun.
So why did you leave after only half a year?
Well, we did 6-month contracts down there, and I think I stayed just 7, 8 months. And then I went over to Ireland. I was going back, actually. I went over to Ireland to see Tom Hardy and Stevie Gordon, who were working for a station called Sunshine Radio in Dublin. And the owner, Robbie Dale, was talking to him in a bar, in one of the bars. I only went over for 72 hours, just as like a weekend. And he said, "What are you doing at the moment?" And I said, "Well, I'm working, going back to Israel." And he said, "What do you want to go and work over there for when there's a job here for it if you want it?" So that was it. I went on to Dublin. And that 72 hours turned into about 3.5 years. Did enjoy it. It was good. But again, there were so many ex-Caroline people there as well. Robbie Dale himself, obviously was Caroline. Stevie Gordon was there. Tom Hart, Andy Archer, and Johnny Jason for a time as well. He came over.
Yeah. And it was in Ireland when you first saw the communicator.
Yep. I don't know if he's here actually. Paul Rustin.
No.
I know he's going to be a little bit later. Yeah. But I got this call one morning. I was working in a place called Tremor, which is near Waterford, and I got this call from Paul, and he said in his Yorkshire accent, "Hey, got this ship, lad. Going to be a radio station. Do you want to come and have a look at it?" And I thought, where the hell is it then? It was in New Ross, 15 miles up the road. And there it was with no aerials, nice transmitters and some interesting studio equipment, but no aerials. And then when I said to him, "Well, how's it going to broadcast? When are you putting the towers up?" And he said, "We're not, we're going to put a balloon up." At that point, I thought, well, as one or two other people did. But It was a very nice ship. It was a very nice ship to look at and very comfortable, but again, rough weather. It was a bit like the Peace ship, all over the place, probably a bit like the Nebo years ago, which I didn't go on, but it just used to be like a cork, and that was its problem. You probably see from the videos, you get the Ross and it's just like that. You get the communicator, and even in the calmest weather it's moving all over the place, but we used to look at the communicator from the Ross thinking, those poor sods out there, I know Rob rather be.
The test broadcasts with Blake Williams were quite a highlight of Laser's history.
That was, think so. It was good fun. It was good fun. That was it. Basically, they had 2 balloons had gone up. One I think lasted about 8 hours and ended up somewhere in Belgium. There was another one that lasted about 8 seconds. That ended up on a roundabout in Colchester in England. So Philip Morris, the guy who was one of the main backers of the station, was getting a little bit obviously tired of forking out all this money and just basically wanted to come to England and hear a signal. So through hook and crook, but we basically got a small area like, with a small signal, but we were using all sorts of things to try and get a signal up the aerial, including using fluorescent tubes with wire wrapped around them as basically as an aerial to force feed the aerial into thinking it was bigger than what it was. But it was good. It was good fun though. Those test transmissions, were very good.
So when Laser had actually started, you went to the Ross Revenge then?
No, I went back to Ireland because I was originally only going to be on there for again a couple of weeks, and that was it. And that turned into nearly three months. I think it nearly was 3 months actually. And then I went back to Ireland, and at that point I stayed for about another 3 months in Ireland. But I'd had the taste of the old sea again, and Ronan kept phoning up saying, "Come back to the lady, come back, she needs you," and all of this sort of stuff. So it was one of those mornings. I'm sure everybody's had a morning where you think, "Oh, I could bloody be doing it without this." The job I was doing. It was great fun, but you just fancied a change. And Ronan called up, and he said, "Have you changed your mind yet?" I said, "Get me on the ship and I'll go back today then, Ronan." And that was it. I came back from Ireland on the Thursday and was out there on the Saturday. So I did go back.
So in 1985 we saw Euro Siege.
Oh yeah.
Caroline seemed to ignore the dioptric.
I think what it was with Caroline was, I've spoken to people from the DTI and that, and they thought at first it was Caroline that was the one that was going to go first, because they thought it was financially, kaput as it were. But obviously with the money from Radio Monique, it had the money. But the other thing with Caroline was, all right, some of the crew tenders were coming out from Britain, but most of the supplies were coming out from Europe. Whereas Laser, everything was coming out from Sheerness, and that was then they suddenly saw, oh, this is going to be the easy option. We can cut it off. And it was a case of sometimes their supply boats, because you get something going near, we had like Laser Caroline, dioptric surveyor. Anything went near Laser, bang, it was off over there like a shot. With us, they often used to turn a blind eye and just let us get on with it. Apart from the time when we went alongside, we took a rubber boat ashore to Ramsgate to go nightclubbing one night. and we thought, this would be great for lovely calm night, it'd be great fun. This is when the government were out there trying to close us down. We thought it'd be great fun to go along to Ramsgate railway station, see if they got any daily newspapers, get all the newspapers and go alongside the dioptric surveyor and chuck them on for them. So we did, and the other thing we did was we banged on the side of the boat, "Wake up, you lazy buggers, newspapers!" So there was just things like that. And the other, you probably heard Charlie doing it, and talking on the air about when it was rough, we'd often sort of say things on the air about the food we'd be eating, but we knew that they monitored our CB communications as well. So what you heard on the medium wave broadcast were very tame compared to what you heard us talking about on the CB, because we knew they were listening, and we're talking about things swilling around on plates and all of this, and Raffles, what he'd done on the deck, and the next thing you'd see is crew at the back of the dioptric. Over the side. So it was all a bit of fun, but there was a serious side to it, I suppose, as well. But the other good thing with Euro Siege, it was almost like £20 million worth of free advertising, especially for Caroline, because a lot of people knew the name Caroline and thought it closed. We were getting, we went from probably about half to 1 sack of mail a week to we were pulling in 20, 30 and sort of mail bags a week, And a lot of the letters were saying the same, well, go on, keep going. And others, we didn't even realise you were still on the air. So there was a great opportunity. And the other thing was, we always had the 558 crystal there. As soon as we realised that laser were, because we knew they were getting in a really dodgy state. In fact, we tried to stop them going. In fact, we did talk them out of going in about a week before then, because they were actually going to go in and haul up anchor about a week before they actually did, but we talked them out of it, only because we wanted to take some of the equipment off the boat. But there's a true story that, because we thought, well, it's going to get impounded, so we might as well have what equipment we can. But unfortunately, the weather never calmed down for that week, and we couldn't get across. But we were going to take, quite a bit of the equipment from the ship and put it on the Ross. So.
Could you give us?
But sorry, the 558 thing, yeah. As soon as we knew, but we didn't do it till they went in. We could have done it beforehand because they were off the air, if you remember, for a few days before they went in. But we were sent out the 558 crystal, and we were told as soon as laser goes in, just bung it on and get a signal. It doesn't matter if it's half a watt, just get a signal out, jump on the frequency, because BBC Essex were looking at it at that point. And although 576 to 558 doesn't sound a lot, believe you me, when you're trying to tune in an aerial, there was sparks flying that night and everything. It was, I believe, when it went on that night, it was only on about 1200 watts. When it first went on that evening, when we jumped on that frequency, about 1200 watts. That's all it was. And we had to turn the mod down at that as well. But eventually, obviously, we built over the course of the next few days, started building the coils, which allowed us to put more signal up the old spout.
Could you give us a brief characteristic of some of your colleagues? For instance,
Nutcases.
Peter Phillips.
Good morning to you. There you go. Now, actually, Peter Phillips, I see him all the time because we only live about a mile and a half away from each other. But it's like a country squire, he really is now. He's lovely, but he works for BBC Radio Kent, one of the BBC, shirt and tie job, the whole lot of the BBC. And he walks around town, because we both live in the same town, and a place called Sandwich, just near Dover. And he walks like a country squire, typical English gentleman, and he talks to them, hello dear boy, how are you? But yeah, nice bloke, but he hasn't changed.
Then we have Fergie McNeil.
Fergie he actually came on board as a chef. He was actually a chef, and knowledge of music, absolutely brilliant. Loves his music, the whole lot. I mean, I haven't seen Fergie for years, but loves his music, and a very nice and easy bloke to get on with as well. Sort of, not the sort of bloke at first you'd expect on Caroline, to be honest, but like Paul McKenna, the hypnotist. It was where he was actually out there as well, started out there.
Peter Chicano.
He's not here, no. Hello there. I remember on the Mi Amigo, Peter, you have an intense conversation with Peter. He's a wonderful bloke, very educated as well. I mean, I knew absolutely nothing about transmitters when I went out to Caroline. Within a month, it was like I could almost rip a 50 kilowatt apart, but that was just because I used to, go and take note of what Peter was doing. But I remember one night we were upstairs in what used to be the newsroom on the Mi Amigo, and we were just talking, and he found this watch, and he said, I'm going to try and get this watch to work. And there it was for about 4 hours. But the trouble is I couldn't leave. You're sort of engrossed in what he was doing, trying to get this watch to work. But yeah, great guy. And funny thing is, one of the stations I work for in England, he actually does the transmitter engineering for us. So I still actually see him. He only lives up the road as well.
So, did you earn some money during your Caroline period?
I was one of the lucky ones. Yeah, I did get. Obviously, it's not one of those where you're going to get £100 a week and that's your wage. It's one of those where it depends what. I was always lucky because knowing diesels, also knowing the ship, what to do in an emergency, and also looking after the transmitters. If Ronin needs you, Ronin will pay you. Let's put it that way. And I was quite lucky. I mean, I haven't seen a £50 note since I worked for Caroline. But I didn't get many of them. Laser was a totally different story. Laser, it was the weeks I did at Laser, it was money up front, and that's when I thought it'd go bust. Money up front, the whole lot, and everything as well. Everything was there. And when you got on shore, there was more. And originally on Laser, it was supposed to be the drink, anything beer was free. Spirits you paid for, like a Bond store, and cigarettes you paid for, but after a couple of weeks that went out the window as well. So you were getting paid and everything was free. That's the other thing with Caroline. You know, you didn't have to pay for anything. Everything was there. And, you know, whereas you couldn't really do it now, because if you got a mortgage, you'd like to know what money's coming in. But then I was living with people, staying with people 9 times out of 10. I was on the ship more than off the ship. So I actually had I actually had more money then than I got now, I think. Or I didn't have any outgoing then, but obviously I had now.
So most people here are coming from Holland, Belgium, Germany. Could you please tell us what does GBH mean?
Oh, generally bloody horrible. Generally, GBH is an English police term, but we actually gave it the name GBH because we thought, what can we call it? And we thought, it's probably going to turn out generally bloody horrible. So it was just called GBH. This is the homebrew beer. But actually, 9 times out of 10, it turned out really, really good. And I still brew at home to this day. I've actually got all the equipment at home. I've got a huge, great shed. I've put all electrics in there, and I've actually got cooling kits and a proper hand pump and everything. But I still brew it because I did some for laser as well. We called it Laser Blast. But they were the kits. The only problem was, because it was brewed on a ship and you really need it, when you sort of ferment it and everything, you really need it to be still. A lot of the time it didn't clear, but we had a couple that really cleared, but it still tasted nice. Yeah, kept you going. More ways than one.
Why did the Laser Hot Hits 576 project fail?
Money, I suppose, really. Just money, yeah. I think it was just Ray Anderson really being a bit too ambitious, and again, he was promised the earth by, certain people in England, and I think he was gullible, taken in by it, to be honest. I think it would have been better selling the ship, and it going from the Thames estuary, because the problem is that the ship, I can remember when it was on the Isle of Man, I can remember spending a couple of nights on it, and it was doing that even there. So you can imagine what it was like 17 miles out into the North Sea. In fact, it's the only ship. I've been on board in some horrendous weather on some of these ships, but the cabins, if you can imagine the ship like this, the cabins on the bunks would face like this. And it's the only ship I can remember waking up on more than one occasion with my feet going over my head, Very true.
So if you compare these 4 ships, what was the most comfortable one?
The Ross. Most comfortable, but the one I'd say I probably got, and Nigel I think would vouch for this, the one I'd say you probably got the most cherished memories of was the Mi Amigo, because everywhere you looked was history. From Radio Nord stuff, if you went down into the transmitter rooms, there was another corridor through the Mi Amigo, through the water tanks, where like Radio Nord and Caroline South, as it was in the 60s, used to have a newsroom, and you still saw relics down there. Also, there was a door on board that just about everybody on board from the days of Blackburn, Johnny Walker, and that had all signed. And again, I know that we carried on, and the Dutch carried it on as well. So, but everywhere you looked, again, there was bits taken from the North ship on there, not a lot, but there was bits. The mixers were from the Caroline South days. It was just history, and that was the weirdest thing going to the Ross. It was almost like there was nothing, if you see what I mean. It was a radio station, and that was it. But then after a while, we actually made it its own ship, if you see what I mean. We put the history back on that, but not the same as the Mi Amigo. Everywhere you looked, there was history on it.
Your offshore radio career ended up on a dummy load.
Yeah. a very leaky dummy load, I might add as well.
Could you tell us?
It's a good. Well, it was basically. We decided to run the big generator on the communicator to get it working, and I thought I'll put it under load. And the funny thing is, when you put the transmitters on laser, because the dummy load's an exact 50 ohms match, you can bung the transmitter on full power, which we did. We just bung like 20 odd kilowatts. Never used to run that with the aerial because you couldn't. But it was also to dry any dampness out. We started it on 5k and then stuck it onto full power. And then I thought I'd muck around with the modulation, and then started playing about doing a program. Little did I realise it was actually leaking a lot further than I thought. In fact, it was going ashore. So that was just a bit of fun. It's a good job I didn't swear though. But that was a bit of fun really. We left it on for an afternoon, and then I think I mucked around for about an hour, 2 hours. Left the transmitter on overnight, and then turned it off. And that was when I was told. I thought, won't do that again then.
And you must have been on, I think, 10 different stations after that.
Oh,
Radio Wyvern, Invicta Radio.
Radio Wyvern, Invicta. Well, I was actually, because I worked for a couple at the same time. You know, it's like now. Although I worked for KMFM, which is one of the local stations, we have 5 different stations. I do the breakfast show for like part of East Kent, but also another radio station. If I fill in or I get paid double for it, I'll go and do an afternoon program as well. But in those days, before KM took over these radio stations, they were all separate, like TLR, Neptune Radio, Radio Wyvern. I was there for a number of years. In fact, that was my first legal one, I suppose legal one, if you like to call it that. And Invicta, I was there for nearly 10 years. You know, just thought it was time for a change and went and opened up TLR.
Are you still doing some engineering work today?
Funny enough, I was at the transmitter site only the other day. Yeah, it's all transmitter work now, though. Yes, and we've got a transmitter engineer, but he lives like 100 odd miles away, and I live 5 minutes drive from one of them. We've got 2 FM transmitters, one 10 minutes away and the other 20 minutes away. So if anything goes off, I normally just have a look at those, you know, keep them on. But the thing is, they're run at such low power, hardly anything ever goes. You know, the high power transmitters run at such low power. It's almost like having a car, like having a Rolls Royce and driving it like a Mini. Nothing's ever going to go wrong. And normally 9 times out of 10, if something does go wrong, it's normally a power cut, which we have nothing. Oh, morning, Ed. Oh. Right.
So is there a chance that we can hear you again on the waterway? No, not on the waterway, but on the wireless.
Yeah, I think I'll probably go back and do a few more. Well, for the time being, because you know what's going on at Caroline, I won't commit myself to a weekly show like I was doing before. But every now and again, yeah, it'd be nice to pop up. And when I get time, because the problem is I do 6 breakfast shows, and you know sometimes on your day off, it's the last thing you want to do, get up and do another program. So I tend to get out and play a lot of golf now. Play golf and stuff like that. So you know, there is a chance that you might well hear me on Caroline every now and again. So okay. I think that's
that's worth to promote.
Oh, I think that's not
the new T-shirt.
I think so. Hang on, have a look. Oh, that's what Andrew must have brought. Excellent. He's got. There you go.
12 euros.
12 euros, medium, large, and extra large. So there we go. Advert over.
Johnny, it was very nice and interesting chatting with you.
Yeah, well, I've been saying I'll come over for a number of years, and it's been lovely to come over, lovely to see so many people as well. It really is. I'm just sorry I had to do it in English and not in Dutch. Yeah.
I hope there will be another time.
Oh yes, there will be, and I'll try and learn a bit more Dutch.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.